Hello, everyone. I am Daniela Garcia, and welcome again to another edition of Encora Talks. Our topic for today is Design Matters, the impact of aesthetic UX on user engagement. We have such an amazing speaker. Her name is Cassandra Baltazar. With over years of experience in the industry, Cassandra is currently a UX designer at Encora. Her diverse skill set encompasses crafting accessible user interfaces and spread-heading user research. Deeply versed in emotional design, she holds a special focus on EdTech. Good morning, Cassandra. We are thrilled to have you here and welcome to Encora Talks.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. All right, so let's start. Okay, so as mentioned before, we are going to cover today the aesthetics of user experience. And what that means is very funny because aesthetics, we usually define that as something beautiful, easy to the eyes, or even pleasant to see, a very subjective action. But the goal of this talk is to cover the basics so we can be able to examine design and be able to give our very objective review of them. So we can be clear with our teams, our designers, overall, uh, everyone in our team. All right, so let's start. Talking about aesthetics with the product design, we are talking more about emotional design and design psychology, and also a little bit more about visual design. So all of these three aspects are used from a very basic level to create these connections with our users. We use these tools as designers so we can have a better understanding of what they expect and how can we help them to achieve that. Will it work better if it looks better? I'm talking more about product design here. And yeah, basically we refer to this as the aesthetic usability effect. And it refers that we as users tend to overlook small usability flaws because of beautiful designs. And due to this effect, a good user experience must go beyond merely just functional. It must reach through our users in a much deeper level. What we can get from this aesthetic usability effect is the product emotion cycle. So how do we design these emotional connections? So successful products tend to reach our users in a more deeper way by creating positive emotions. Emotions such as joy when some transactions went well or as we expected to, or even negative emotions in the worst case scenario, like emotions of anger or frustration, even when something does not work. So, as designers, it's our job to create and reinforce these positive emotions in a product. It may seem weird to create emotions with something that is not alive, but it's something that we do every day. We may not even notice it, but we are constantly creating these emotions with our products. From where this product emotion cycle comes from. So all started with the research. I'm going to talk more about the why and before going further. All started in Japan in the Hitachi Design Center in 1995. So in this university, 252 participants were tested with 26 variations of ATM's UI. So these variations of ATMs, they all have similar structure, information inside them. They all perform the same functions, but what they do have different was the colors, the hierarchy, the spacing between components. So these variations were pretty different one from each other. And what they discovered was that users really relate beauty with usability. It was easier for the users to do certain tasks that they were asked to, such as check on their account money or just withdraw a certain amount of money from these ATMs. They considered that it was easier with the beautiful UIs or with the aesthetic UIs that they were presented to. This is not just a cultural effect or a psychological effect. We are just uncovering a more deeper level of design psychology. We must think that it could be just a cultural thing due to this was an experiment made on Japan in 1995, but an Israel designer researcher tried to replicate this same experiment in Israel. And well, the ATMs, the difference was that they were in Hebrew instead of Japanese. And basically, the results were the same. Users are more comfortable using beautiful UIs. They tend to think that these UIs are more easy to use for them or user-friendly. So we can discard the idea that this is just a cultural phenomenon. So aesthetic design, it's easy to see that a product is aesthetic, but how can we explain that a product is aesthetic? As I mentioned before, this could be something subjective, a subjective matter for most of us, but it shouldn't be. This could be easily fixed with some fundamentals that we are just going to talk about. So these fundamentals are four aspects of UX design that we as product designers tend to come back every now and then and reassess if we are reaching our users' goals, our business objectives, and overall a functional design. So there are very fundamental steps to create a user-friendly flow for our users. The first one is usability, which means that the product works and users understand how it works. So at this point, we do not have much of hand-holding for our users. If we need to explain or over-explain a flow or a task for our users, it means that we are overdoing it. It means that we need to step back and rethink how usability works in our product. The second fundamental is accessibility, which allows the interface to work for different people with different abilities and across various devices. Well, accessibility divides into aspects, as I just mentioned. The first one based really heavily on the WCAG best practices, which are rules that we can follow as designers to make our designs more accessible for people with different cognitive abilities or even visual abilities. And that way we can get easily to them and then easily can access to our products as well. And the other part of the accessibility fundamental is the devices. So we want our users to be able to access to our platforms or our apps in myriad of ways. We can design for smartwatches or even cell phones or TVs, and that will accomplish that fundamental of accessibility for our users because we are reaching through them. The third one is utility, which means that our product solves a problem. We are helping our users to reach their goal by using our product, and we are not just designing for the sake of it. And the fourth one is desirability. So this means our product is pleasurable and makes our users happy. So this is one of the crucial conditions to make a positive user experience, which we cover in previous slides. It's more about emotional design and creating these positive connections with our users. Since we as users are full of intuition, emotion, and memories, that's what we need to aim to in order to create user-friendly products. Creating user-friendly or designing user-friendly products means that we naturally provide signals to indicate our users what they need to do in order to achieve their goals. So these signals, we also call them affordances. And we can think about it like how a door works. So the door will, with their natural affordances, indicate us if we need to push or pull it in order to pass through. So these affordances can be replicated also in digital products. So these signals must not destroy aesthetics, and also they must not sacrifice usability. These affordances must be subtle and not aggressive at all with our users, but they also need to be very clear. And that's where we as product designers enter to the game. So now let's go to the application. This is my favorite part of the presentation because we are now going to discuss some aspects that you can easily notice in a design, any design, and with these aspects be able to give your opinion, objective opinion of why a design does not look good to you or do look good to you. Okay, so how can we improve the user experience using UI? And the answer is consistency. And we are going to talk about consistent in several ways. The ones that I'm going to talk about right now, they are not just the only things that we consider at the moment of designing UI. There are a lot more, but these are just the fundamentals that we are going to cover. These are the tips to get you started. So the first two are a style guide and a spacing. So when we are talking about a style guide, we are not just talking about the brand guidelines, which they are super helpful and very defining to the rest of the design we are creating. But we are also talking about the style guide in digital products, meaning a style of buttons, a style of icons, colors that can replicate in digital interfaces. And the common understanding of a style guide is just working with brand colors, brand logos, or typographies, which these both interrelates at the end to create the same look and feel for our users. But they are not just limited to that. We all are also talking about spacing in this slide. As a rule of thumb, we use 8 pixels to make development easy and again, consistent. But we can even go further and use 4 pixels to achieve a spacing. It's all about having clear communication with the development team and really nail down which are the spacing rules that we are going to follow. So in this case, we are looking at an example of an ergonomic mouse review. And we can see that we are using the rule of 4. The rule of 4 applies most for mobile devices such as smartphones or smartwatches, really small screens, but we can even use this in a desktop view if we need to. So as I was saying, in this example, we can see that everything has 4 pixels as a rule. So we can see the padding and the margin with force. The separation between elements between the body of text and the images has also 4 pixels as a rule. And even the height of the elements, the body of text and the icons has this rule of 4. So as you can see, it's really easy to spot with the pink indicators these spacing rules. But if we remove those indicators and just push together all of these elements, we will notice right away that the experience decreases a lot. We will be removing a lot of readability from this design, and the experience will be not the same, as for sure. So now you know that the spacing is a really big part of the design process. So now we have consistency and white space. Consistency here is repeated again, but I'm using it as its own standard, because we are not just talking about consistency in colors and structure, we are also talking about consistency in industry standards. So it's very important to follow the industry standards because as a global community, we are used to certain things from our digital products. We have 20 years using digital products right now, or even more, I think. So there is no need to reinvent the wheel if we don't have to. As an example, you can think about the search icon. We are used to see the search icon as a magnifying glass. We are used to look for the search option in the navbar on the top of a screen. So there's no need to reinvent that. There's no need to have another icon that symbolizes search if the users will not be able to find it and not be able to access that information. So that's important. That's why it's important to keep industry standards. In this example of consistency, you can see that we are respecting the same colors across the various screens. And I don't know if you can see that, but we are also respecting other style guide options that the users will be able to spot immediately in order to gain trust in that specific app. The last one is white space. So white space is very similar to the spacing. We are also respecting here the rule of 4 or 8 even. And what we can use in white space correctly is a more readable, scrollable, and understandable interface. So here we are creating, just with white space, the affordance that we were talking before. We are just letting know the users using white space that they can keep scrolling through the site. They can keep reading below that. We can see in this lo-fi mug that the information is really in order and there is not confusion on what to do. On all that can be achieved using white space. So it's a very powerful tool as well. Okay, so now you have the basics, things you can spot easily in order to critique a design. So that's it's important to remember that aesthetic will not help us overlook a deeper usability issue. We can't rely just in creating something beautiful. We still need our research. Our design decisions should be based on the needs and wants of real users. And that can be achieved through user interviews, feedback, and continuous iteration on the designs. So currently we have AI to help us do that, but we don't need to rely just in that, because AI will get the patterns that users tend to speak more. AI won't tell us the current pain points of our users. So that's why it's important to keep contact with our users and base our design decisions on that. Okay, so now we can talk about the business. How an aesthetic interface will help our business. It's important so we can spend time and effort on that, or we can just let it by and go with our lives. Well, let's put it in this way. Creating an aesthetic interface will create a safe space for our users. Users will most often come back to our interface if they are comfortable with it, if they like what they see, and if they feel safe inside the interface. So that's why we need to create these spaces for them so they can feel that they can share it with other friends, they can share it with other people they know, and thus we'll be connecting with more users, creating more sales for us. So yes, we can say that aesthetic is important to achieve our business objectives. So here I put an example to practice what we just covered. We all know that Apple has their own website, and we can spot right away what is wrong with this design. We can't see any clear style guide whatsoever. I'm not sure if back in 97 Apple had their own style guide, but we can see it here. We can't see even a clear call to action to search something. They label it as find it. So that's another pattern that they didn't follow. And I can bet you that you wouldn't wouldn't pay the same amount of money to buy a laptop from this side that from this other side. We know it's the same brand, and that's the magic of iteration. This is the screenshot that I took a couple of weeks ago, and we can sure see that the white space is being respected, the style guide as well, and now is more comfortable to read design. Now we know what to do and what we can find in this side. So let's go back a little bit and just compare these two designs and really think of the things that they're not just working anymore for us. And yeah, you can practice this later, and it will be a good exercise just to assess what we just saw. All right. So let's remember that aesthetics is a powerful tool because we are just building the feeling of trust that will make our brand stronger. And that is where aesthetics can come and help us to create this user experience more solid and helpful for our users. We are not just designing products. Our goal is to build trust, create this community, where our users can always come back and always get and achieve their goals. So that's it from my end. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassandra, for all the information you have provided us. We are now ready to start with our Q&A section. And the first question I have for you is, how do we define the style guide?
All right. Yeah. Well, the style guide can be defined with the other departments of your team. Usually, if it's a big company, they already have defined the logo, the colors, and all the basics you will need to create your digital product. So there is not a solo journey here. You always need confirmation and always need support from the marketing team and the design team even. So that's how you can start designing your product.
Thank you so much, Cassandra. The next question is, how can we know the UX patterns users are more related to?
Okay, so the UX patterns are all available online. They are labeled as UX pattern libraries, and we don't even have to go that far. We can even spot the patterns in our current decisions. So like I was mentioning before, the search bar is always in the same places. So you can even go to those design UX patterns libraries online and just type current search bar pattern, and you will get that information. That is not just one way to do that, but all is documented right now. It's easier for us to design more informed.
Okay, thank you, Cassandra. And the last question is, when is the right moment to start with UI in the UX design process?
Okay, so the best moment is right after you have your research done. I mentioned before that design is an iterative process, but you need your decisions to be very informed and heavily based on what the users needs. So that's why you need to, after defining your scope and defining your goals, do the research and come back and now put all your ideas into your Figma file and start working in your UI. It's also very important to define by then your style guide, as I mentioned, so you don't have any other distractions, just the UI and the correct layout for your product.
Okay, Cassandra, thank you again. Thank you so much for being part of this initiative from Incora. And thank you everyone for joining us. Please keep an eye out for more webinars that we will be hosting soon. We also invite you to watch the recorded webinars we have hosted, talks.incora. Thank you so much.
Thank you.